Welcome to All-Star Spotlight 1989. Over the years, NASCAR has seen its fair share of close finishes and great moments. But in '89, Rusty Wallace and Darrell Waltrip were at very different points on the career spectrum. Here was Waltrip, three-time champion, one of the sport's biggest stars.
Darrell Waltrip goes high in turn one. Richard Petty looks for daylight underneath. He's alongside. It's a drag race to the finish line. Down the backstretch, the final two turns. Petty can't hold the STP car low. Here comes Waltrip underneath. Waltrip has the lead. After 367 laps, this has come down to a 100-yard dash. Who's it going to be? Allison tries the inside. Darrell Waltrip wins the Rebel 500.
Coming around to take the checkered flag this afternoon. Give win number 3 of the 1985 season to Darrell Waltrip. He is across the line, finishing in first.
Darrell trying to get along. They're even right now, Dave. Nobody's got anything coming right now. Oh, they get sideways.
He hit him coming off, and he hit him going in. He used up all of his bumper that time. Waltrip, a beautiful line. Here comes Wallace moving to the inside. Wallace pulling ever so much closer. It'll be Darrell Waltrip, the first man in history to win this event 4 times.
Up against Wallace, this aggressive young kid from Missouri, trying to elbow his way onto the NASCAR stage.
Final lap. Can Jeff Bodine catch Rusty Wallace? And he nudges him in turns 1 and 2. Wallace will down to shape. Bodine back on the inside. They are door to door. Down for the white flag. Final time. Here's Wallace back on the inside. And he nudges Jeff Bodine in turns 3 and 4. The crowd on their feet. And will be Rusty Wallace will win it here at North Wilkesboro Speedway.
He nails that accelerator down the chute, drops inside. He pushes him down the backside. Wallace carries him right to the inside wall. Wallace is down on the white line. Oh, Waltrip goes high. Rusty Wallace fades with him a bit. Waltrip definitely had the momentum coming out of turn number 2. He goes right up underneath Rusty. He pushes him across the finish line.
Here comes Kulwicki charging at the end. He picked up 3 car lengths down the straightaway in the backside, but at the line, Rusty Wallace records his second victory of 1989.
Well, those two career trajectories crossed right here. Charlotte Motor Speedway, May 21st, 1989, and they put on one of the most memorable races in NASCAR history. What followed was burnt rubber, bent egos, broken friendships, and clashing crews. When we come back, we'll take a look at Rusty Wallace and Darrell Waltrip and their dominant start to the 1989 season. Then it's off to Charlotte for segment 1 of the Waltrip and Wallace duel in the All-Star Spotlight 1989. Entering NASCAR's 5th running of the Winston All-Star race in 1989, Darrell Waltrip and Rusty Wallace were on a collision course. DW started the season off with a bang. He finally won the Daytona 500 in his 17th try. The next week, Wallace overcame a 2-lap deficit to win at the Rock.
Here comes Rusty Wallace. He wins the Goodrich 500, and second place goes to Alan Kulwicki by a bumper.
Waltrip and Wallace exchanged victories at the next 2 races, Atlanta and Richmond. And so, by the time the circuit came to Charlotte in May, Rusty and Darrell had combined to win 6 of the first 9 races. But there were 2 completely different driving styles at work when it came to their winning ways in '89.
Rusty is the most enthusiastic person out there that I've ever met. You know, he just always is running at 9,000 RPM, it seems like.
The guy was just relentless. They said, you know, when he didn't have 2 pennies rubbed together, he was out there working on his race car till all hours of the night, doing whatever it took, towing however far it took to go race.
Rusty's a really smart racer. He's very fast. He understands his race cars. He is not one of those drivers that figures if his car didn't drive good, that's the team's fault. He's part of that equation. He believes that he's part of the reason that his car needs to run well or it doesn't run well.
If he's got a race car that's quick and you're holding him up, he may tap you very lightly a lap or 2. And somewhere between the 3rd and 5th lap, if you don't move out of the way, he'll help you move out of the way.
Darrell was pretty smart as far as figuring what he could do and what he couldn't do without abusing the tires, abusing the car. and he knew when to race and when not to.
Yeah, Darrell Waltrip was a thinker. You know, he wasn't what you call a tough guy. He wasn't the kind of driver that tried to intimidate other drivers. He tried to outsmart them, and that's what he did. He outsmarted guys.
I thought he had an interesting style. He wasn't maybe the most liked guy in the garage, but he was probably one of the more respected drivers because in his prime, he was very, very hard to beat.
The stage was set for a showdown at Charlotte, and when it came time to drop the green flag on the first of 3 segments for the '89 All-Star race, it was no surprise that Rusty and Darrell again had the cars to beat. Only 2 laps in, Dale Earnhardt and Wallace were ready to challenge pole sitter Terry Labonte for the lead.
Very early on, Earnhardt says, I want to win this thing. I want to take it all home. And Earnhardt goes into the lead. Rusty Wallace comes down on the inside.
2/3 of this first race now complete. Again, the format is a 75-lap race. We're in that now, 2/3 of the way done. They have to make a pit stop for 2 tires at some time during this race.
A flat tire for Earnhardt took him out of contention, leaving Wallace to deal with a hard-charging DW with a Segment 1 victory.
And for the checkered flag, Rusty Wallace leads Waltrip across the line.
With the first segment out of the way, time for the crews to adjust those cars and get ready for Segment 2. And the opportunity for DW to turn the tide on the Winston. Coming up on All-Star Spotlight 1989, DW and Jeff Hammond looking for a way to catch Rusty Wallace.
We're in a damn gunfight, aren't we, bud? Yeah. Done really good.
Welcome back to All-Star Spotlight 1989. Rusty Wallace had already taken the win in Segment 1. So Darrell Waltrip and his trusted crew chief Jeff Hammond knew they needed some changes to the Tide rod.
We're in a damn gunfight, aren't we, bud? Yeah. Done really good.
This is a hard part.
Yeah.
I can just get a good start.
Yeah, I know it. I know. Listen, just remember one thing. Do all you can do in your own ability. And if it turns out good, then great. If it doesn't, well, that's the way the Lord meant for it to be. You know, it's tough sometimes, but we had a good day, bring home one piece.
The green light winks on, the flag flies, and Wallace begins to lead. Waltrip, Schrader, Mulwicki, and Earnhardt begin to battle for 4th place as they head off into the first turn.
Rusty Wallace again, right down to the white line through turn 1 and turn 2. And a little bit of that was protection to keep Waltrip being able to get under it, Paul.
Waltrip glued right to the back end of Wallace's car in a fight for the lead.
Waltrip must have been listening to Hammond's advice. He wastes no time wrestling the lead away from Wallace.
Now that's something different. He's not only trying it, he's going right on by Wallace.
On the backstretch, Waltrip takes the lead.
With DW out front, pulling away, Wallace could tell something was not quite right on his Pontiac.
Long story short, I had a fast car that race, and I took off and I won the first segment. In a pretty dominant fashion, I won the first segment. Well, the second segment, I come in, and I go out there and run, and man, my car's loose as a goose. That baby's all over the place sliding around.
20 laps to go in the second race of the Winston, the 50-lapper. Darrell Waltrip is out in front, followed by Wallace.
With Rusty's handling problems slowing him down, DW easily wins Segment 2.
I mean, we had such a dominant car that day, and Rusty could not run with me. I mean, I had one of those B&R engines. That's who built the engines back then, and for those cars for Rick Hendrick on a lot of occasions. And we called them Be Ready motors, because when you stepped on one of them, you better be ready. They would fly.
But while Waltrip looked to cruise home with his second All-Star race triumph, the Wallace crew gave their drivers some good news heading into the final segment.
Well, they come across the radio when I get ready to start the third segment and say, Rusty, we had the right side tires on backwards. We had the right front on the right rear, and the right rear tire was about 1/2 an inch bigger. And back then, you know, stagger was everything in the world. And so, boy, my car was loose as heck. So when I started that third segment, man, my car went right back to handling really, really good.
2 segments down. Rusty and DW have split them. Now comes the rubber match. Only room here for one King of the Road. Coming up on All-Star Spotlight 1989, the dramatic final segment, winner take all. Would it be Jaws or Rubberhead? We'll find out after the break. Before the green flag ever dropped on the final segment of the 89 All-Star race, Wallace and Waltrip each knew they had a car that could win. Their two teams had dominated the season thus far, and they split the first two legs of the race. When the green flag fell on that deciding segment 3, DW quickly jumped to the lead. Rusty felt out his car.
Still Darrell Waltrip showing the way by 2 car lengths over Wallace. Again, Wallace puts it right down to the bottom of the racetrack. Really pouring on the steam here and trying to track down Darrell Waltrip. But again, Waltrip holds the spot off turn 2.
Down the backstretch they come. It's a car length between Waltrip and Wallace as Wallace holds his own this time on the straightaway. They hit turn 3. Waltrip slides up high. Wallace will pinch it down low. He'll try and draw alongside in 4. Can't do it. Falls back in line single file.
But as the laps wound down toward the checkered flag, Waltrip's lead was growing smaller and smaller.
Rusty Wallace is on Waltrip's bumper as they come to the line. Then they separate by 2 car lengths, but out of 4, Wallace was knocking on Waltrip's door. Darrell knows this driver can do just about anything he wants, but so can Waltrip. They command this racetrack. It's all up to horsepower and driver now. Machine and driver. Could be a mind game. 6 are gone. Be 7 in the books, 3 to go. When they come back, here comes Wallace once again. Wallace looks to the inside. Pushes Waltrip off of 4. It's a reverse of what we saw here last year when Waltrip pushed Wallace across the finish line in the 500.
So anyway, I probably should have been a little more aggressive right at the end of that race, but I just didn't want to screw up because I knew I had a better car. And sure enough, we're coming down to get the white flag, and I go into turn 3 and I eased it in there. Well, Rusty was coming with a full head of steam.
I said, man, don't lift. I was just like, whatever happens, happens. Go for it. And I stayed in the throttle, and that front end sliding, and I'm like, oh man, hold on. And I was like, heck with it, it's going to make it, you know. I know if the longer I get through this corner, it's finally going to stick and it's going to quit sliding.
They touch. Waltrip is sideways. Wallace drives through. Waltrip spinning to the infield grass. Darrell Waltrip with the brakes locked up, sliding down the front straightaway grass as Rusty Wallace continues on.
But I was a little loose right in the middle of the corner, and I sure didn't need anybody bumping into me right there. But son of a gun, if he didn't bump me just enough to get me around, and of course I spun down the front off of 4 and down in the grass.
There's one camp that says Rusty spun Darrell out. There's another camp that says Darrell slightly came down into Rusty. Too close to call from where I saw it.
Waltrip, a little more grim face than he was a few seconds ago. He had hoped by this time to be counting his $200,000 prize.
If you're Rusty Wallace, you're supposed to concede that position to the veteran. You're talking about a guy that had won 3 Winston Cups at that point, and here's Rusty Wallace coming in, a young guy, hadn't won anything yet, and he's unabashedly dumping Darrell Waltrip, unabashedly so, and has no problem with it after the fact.
Darrell goes down through the grass at Charlotte, and NASCAR makes some pretty controversial calls and puts Darrell at the back of the pack for causing the yellow flag, and they had all these special rules in for that race.
First of all, we wanted them to put us back where we were because he spun us out. So we at least wanted to be, if it really wanted to be a good Winston, they should have put me in second place. It'd been the best Winston they ever had. It might have been the biggest wreck they ever had, I don't know.
$200,000 just a mile and a half away as the white flag signaling the last lap comes out. Schrader closes in on Wallace on the final lap in the first turn. Schrader right at the back end, but look at the power in Wallace's Pontiac as he pulls onto the backstretch.
With Waltrip too far back to challenge, Wallace rolled uncontested to his one and only victory in the All-Star race. But the real fireworks were about to begin.
As you can see, the tempers are hot when there's that much money on the line, as quite a fight broke out just outside of the winner's circle here. Officials and other team members moved in trying to break it up.
I know all the Darrell Waltrip fans hate me right now. I know all the Rusty Wallace fans are loving it.
but it's a controversial last lap, just like a controversial 1987 they had.
It's the same old deal about the Winston. The best car don't win always, hardly ever. Because you start in the front and everybody's shooting at you, and you're the biggest target, so you're the first one to get hit.
I beat him again, and I didn't beat him the way I wanted to beat him. We got together. But he's always got something to complain about when it's got something like this.
You consider this good, clean racing?
I consider it to Winston.
Man, everybody went crazy. Half the fans wanted to kill me. You know, the place was upside down. The whole infield was in a fight.
My team got up on the wall, and they were ready. And when Rusty came down pit road, they attacked his car.
And that's what was great about NASCAR back then, and I think that that's what enamored a lot of people to it. You know, right now in NASCAR, the way that we're transitioning into the mainstream, so many fans are frustrated because they feel the sport has forgotten its roots, so to speak. And that's what so many fans back then loved, because it was raw emotion. It was emotion you could see in NASCAR and nowhere else. You cannot fight in professional football, baseball, you know? In NASCAR, they were throwing punches, man, because it meant so much to win.
And here comes the crew, and somebody pushed Todd Parrott, and somebody pushed somebody else, and the next thing you know, they're like a bunch of mad dogs all in a wad just going at each other.
Following that spring day when tempers boiled over in 1989, NASCAR fan perceptions of both Wallace and Waltrip changed forever.
After that, I got a death threat in my office against Rusty Wallace. Somebody called and said, we're going to kill him. And that the first time that had happened. And because you know, there was booing and booing and booing of the Waltrip fans, and also some fans that weren't even Waltrip fans that didn't see it the way maybe some other people saw it.
Darrell could walk by the front grandstand and people would boo. I mean, Rusty Wallace, when he spun him in the All-Star race out at Charlotte, that revitalized Darrell from being hated and booed everywhere he would go to a crowd favorite.
Coming up, we'll have a look at what later happened to two of NASCAR's greatest and most colorful champions. Following that '89 All-Star Classic, Darrell and Rusty continued to excel. The following week, DW claimed his fifth and final victory in the Coke 600. Wallace came from behind to defeat his old rival Dale Earnhardt for the championship. Both Waltrip and Wallace would end the season with 6 victories, more than any other driver. DW took his last career win in 1992 at Darlington. He retired in the year 2000, tied Bobby Allison for 3rd on the all-time career win list.
Well, I think Darrell not only had the talent behind the wheel, but Darrell also had probably learned from someone like Richard Petty of what kind of impact and influence the fans could have on your career. So I think that a lot of the things that he used to say to spark the fans were just something to get them started.
He's going to say what he thinks, whether it's politically correct or it's going to hurt somebody's feelings. That's the way he's always been, and that's one of the reasons I've always admired him and why it's such an honor to work with him, because I mean, he ruffles feathers. There's NASCAR drivers that come to me today and say, hey, you tell DW. But you know what? Darrell says what he thinks. It's that, again, it's an honesty. It's a not only a passion, it's an honesty. It's a love of the sport, but he's got to tell you how he really feels about it.
I mean, the fact that we believed that our driver was the best driver at the time out there, and we just knew that no matter what came up in front of us, we'd either figure it out or we'd run over it. It was just that simple. We just did not believe in taking anything less than the checker flag to the house.
I thrived on letting the other guy beat himself. I thrived on doing what Dale did. I would sit on your back bumper, but I wouldn't hit you. I'd sit on your back bumper and make you wonder if I was going to hit you. And every now and then I'd hit somebody just so I'd say, he will hit you.
Rusty claimed his last NASCAR checker at Martinsville 2004 for a career total of 55 and retired at the end of the '05 season.
Wallace could be considered a mix
of the Bulldog of Yarborough and the Sly Fox of David Pearson, because you don't know exactly which Rusty Wallace you're going to get on that particular day. Is it going to be the one that's going to come charging through the field, or is it the one on the short track that's going to weave his way through all the trouble, get there at the front, take the lead, and you're never going to see him again?
I think that his knowledge of the race cars has been a great asset to him over the years, and you match that with the talent and the determination that he has, which made him a great race driver.
When I think of Rusty Wallace, I think of things that he brought to the sport, too. He brought business sense to it, you know, with a lot of the drivers and stuff. In today's world, Rusty's done really well. He started out with nothing, but, you know, he has car dealerships now. And I think his involvement with Penske for those years has really polished him off. We've seen him grow from just this hot rodder racing guy to a real businessman now.
I know if I got racing a car too hard, I'd overheat the brakes. I know if I bumped into the side of a car, knocked the front fenders in, I'd lose my front downforce, the car wouldn't handle. I knew to stay away from everybody. I call it, hey, let's just check out and get out of here and log some laps. There's many times where I had such a dominant car, I'd come across radio and tell the guys, hey, I'm throttling back, I'm just going to ride for a while and save this equipment. When some guys, their tempers are getting up, their tempers are flaring, they're getting mad, they're taking it out, they're beating, they're banging. You're lapping those guys 4 or 5 times a race because their equipment's so tore up and spent they can't be competitive.
Together, those two gave us some great memories, none better than the one remembered here in the 1989 All-Star Spotlight. I'm Dave Despang. Thanks for joining us.